right, Film Geeks, today's class is all about Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, the new war movie starring Jake Gyllenhaal about one of war's most sacred bonds. Let's talk about it. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of All Right, Let's Talk About It. My name is Savannah. I am your host. I do film reviews and film industry commentary. I finally got to see The Covenant, y'all. I saw it, what's today? Tuesday. So I saw it yesterday at like 2 o'clock-ish. And if you don't know the story, let me tell you. I talked a little bit about this in, I think it was either Chevalier or the Pope's Exorcist review. I was supposed to see this movie last Thursday. I had my ticket ready to go. Everything was Gucci, right? So I go to the theater because I was doing a double feature. 5 o'clock was Chevalier, and then 7 o'clock was The Covenant. So cutting it pretty close. Chevalier ran about an hour, 47 minutes, but you got to add on about 20 minutes worth of previews, right? So the movie was scheduled to end right after The Covenant started, but I'm factoring in those 20 minutes of trailers, previews. So I knew that if I just hightailed it out of the theater, ran up to the front for them to scan my ticket, because you can't really scan the ticket while you're going to see another, it's a whole thing. And then ran straight to the theater, I'd be Gucci. Great. I'm at this movie theater all the time, so I know where every single theater is. Like, I have this place mapped out better than my own house. So Chevalier ends, right? And I go to the front to have them scan my ticket because they already knew that I was coming back. I told them when I got there, hey, I'm seeing two movies. What, do I just come back out, do the thing? Yep, they already knew. So, and they know me. So they already know. So I come back out, show her my phone to scan my ticket. She says, oh, this is the one that's broken. So Theater 9, which is where The Covenant was supposed to be, the projector broke. Now, this happens. It's not usually that big of a deal. Sometimes some things happen and they have to fix it. And sometimes they can fix it within 10, 15 minutes and it just pushes things back a little bit. No big deal. However, this was not something that could be fixed. And this was the only showing for that day. It's a Thursday night. So it's kind of like, an early Thursday night pre-screening kind of deal, which is now kind of the custom, the norm for the film industry, to release things on Friday, but have that early screening for people on a Thursday night. So this was the only one for that day, the 7 o'clock. So they canceled it and I was sad, but I went to go see The Pope's Exorcist with Russell Crowe instead. And I really enjoyed that. But while I was there, I went ahead and got my ticket for Monday because I wouldn't be able to go over the weekend. I was pretty much in church all weekend, and went to go see the movie yesterday afternoon. And let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Wow. Okay. So this movie right here, I am loving the direction the film industry is going right now. I feel like there's been, and come at me if you will, I really don't care. I feel like there's just been a lot of virtue signaling going on in the industry right now, with everyone trying to push an agenda, push a movement, push their own thoughts and opinions in film, and people are kind of just not having it. I think there's kind of a time and a season for that, but I think given that what we just kind of came out of with the pandemic, people are looking to escape. And also considering we spent so much of our time online, so many of these takes that the film industry is pushing are just chronically online takes. They're fun and cute and slightly annoying online, but I think once we got back out into the real world, that's when we started to realize, okay, so much of this was just dumb, stupid. We're sick of it. We're over it. We have no more F's to give. And we just saw a bit of that in 2022, people just trying to push an agenda, push rhetoric, push whatever, and people weren't having it. But I feel like we're starting to get back into movies being entertainment, movies being an art form that's beautiful, where, not to say that there should be any kind of message or teaching in it, but there's a way to do it. There's a way to take a plot and weave a social commentary into it. I did a review for, I think it was 1001 with Tiana Taylor. Great social commentary about, the changing landscape, gentrification, even little tidbits here about the foster care system, a great way to really tell a story and then have those social issues in the background so that we can almost kind of relate to it a bit. We can kind of see ourselves in that situation. That's when it's done right. But when you're trying to make that social commentary an overtone, it just doesn't work. Now, with this movie, The Covenant, I think there's risk for that because this is a war movie. And I mean, I can't really speak for Gen Z. I don't really know what's in the minds of Gen Z people when we're talking about war. I am a millennial. I was 14 years old when 9/11 happened. And so I remember all of that. That was very much my adolescence, Operation Enduring Freedom and then Operation Iraqi Freedom. And we just left Afghanistan. What was that, last year? Last summer. I'm getting all my years mixed up. But so that's very much my adolescence. And even you want to talk about, my childhood as well, Persian Gulf, Desert Storm, Kosovo, stuff like that. You know, I'm not unfamiliar with it. And so having war as a backdrop in a lot of movies does not bother me as much because it's very much part of the reality, even though it's very, it can be traumatic for some people. It's loud, it's boisterous, and sometimes it does push something here or there. There's kind of an escape in it. There's something about the military, I think, for a lot of people when it comes to movies, it's very reassuring, it's safe. Does that make sense? I don't know. I think there's something not so much about the environment and the wars themselves, but something about the men and women in uniform, I think makes people feel safe and secure. That's just a theory more than anything. But I say that because I think nowadays, with the ending of Afghanistan and then things that happened right after the Taliban took over the country, we still have men and women who are left behind. And Afghanistan is probably worse than it was when we started. It's not looking good for the men and women there, especially the women. That's always been the biggest concern. Girls, women being abused, murdered, denied education. So we have this movie from Guy Ritchie that takes place in March 2018, so a couple of years before the exit, if you will. And it's interesting. I don't know. I'm trying to remember a movie that really had this kind of prominence about Afghanistan. I can't think of one in recent memory. So don't hear me say, "Oh, this is the most prominent Afghan." No, I just can't remember one. I think it's just been a while. But this movie was something different than any other war movie that I have seen. A lot of war movies, I don't want to use the word glorify because I think glorify has a negative connotation, but they tend to show war in a very pro-American kind of light. There's something very hell yeah, go America about certain war movies, efforts, moments, and scenes. And there was definitely a couple of those in here where I was like, God, I love being American. Yes, blow things up, like that kind of feel. But this was a little bit different. And I think it kind of took the Americanness out of it that we're so used to seeing in a lot of war movies and gave us kind of a reality of military. Something that if you've ever spoken to someone who was active duty in the military, that, movies give us this very kind of exciting, fun, jovial kind of feel of the military. Everyone's happy go lucky and, having a good time, chilling, joking around, hanging out, and then ish happens. We don't really get a picture of kind of the regular mundaneness that military life overseas can be. Forrest Gump gave us a little bit of that, when he went over to Vietnam and they were just kind of doing run of the mill things and he didn't always quite understand why he was there, what they were doing, what was going on. They were just following orders. We get a little bit of that here, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So, what is this movie? This is Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. Guy Ritchie, for those who don't know, he also directed the Sherlock Holmes movies. Very gifted director. He's also Madonna's ex-husband. I think that's how most people know his name. If you're not familiar with his work, you know him as Madonna's ex-husband. I think they divorced in 2008. This movie stars Jake Gyllenhaal as Sergeant John Kinley and then Dar Salim as Ahmed. So what is this movie about? This movie is about Sergeant John Kinley, and he leads now. Bear with me. I'm going to get some terminology wrong here. And also, spoiler alert. There's no way to really talk about this about spoiling it, but I think the trailer, if you've seen it, pretty much gives the story away. It's a very straightforward story. So this is about Sergeant John Kinley, and he leads a team of men in the Army, and their job is to find the places where bombs are being built, IEDs. And what I loved about this movie is it doesn't assume that we know what any of these words mean. So oftentimes they'll say something or an acronym, and then Guy Ritchie shows us either at the bottom in a very creative, fun, almost kind of PowerPointy kind of way, what these words mean, what calls mean, stuff like that. So I love that he doesn't assume that we understand. It gives it a very real, true, and almost kind of documentary feel to it. So he leads his team where their job is to find explosives. And much of the beginning of the movie, we're following them doing run-of-the-mill mundane things where they're following dead leads, or things are just, it's boring. They don't understand what they're doing or why. And then they finally get a lead and they get there and they find what they're looking for. Now, that's John Kinley. He's a sergeant in the military. We later learn that he's been doing this military thing for about 12 plus years. And because they're in Afghanistan, these are Americans. They don't speak the language. They require interpreters. And this is something I learned being on TikTok and interacting with people in the deaf community, the difference between a translator and an interpreter. Now, I don't speak another language fluently. I am an American. While we do learn languages in schools, we oftentimes lose those skills because we don't have as many opportunities to use them. If you don't use it, you lose it. And it's not like we live in Europe where you're next door to another country. They go to other countries like we go from state to state to state. And when you go from state to state to state in the United States, everyone speaks the same language still. It's very uncommon for you to go into another state and it's a completely different language. You might go into another town or another community where another language is spoken to some extent. For the most part, everyone here speaks English. So while you might take 7, 10 years of a foreign language, eventually, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So understandably so, they're in an environment where they don't know the language, so they need an interpreter. And I learned this, the difference between translator and interpreter is that translators are just, giving you kind of the word for word of what things mean. But an interpreter is not just going to give you what they're saying, but what they mean. So this is someone who not only understands the language, but also understands the culture. So he can give them an idea as to what they mean. So there were moments where, he's talking to someone in their language, and we're seeing what's being said, but he doesn't give him a direct translation. He basically says he wants more money. That's what he's saying. That's what just gives him kind of the basics of it. He's interpreting for him. And I don't know. I thought that was so interesting because he makes that distinction, between a translator and an interpreter. He's not just there to help them, communicate, but also understand. You understand the difference? So Ahmed is going with them on missions. He's military trained. He knows how to handle a weapon, how to handle himself in the field. But his primary job is to make sure that they can communicate with the locals if need be. So they're on this mission together. And the thing about Ahmed's job as the interpreter is not just translating language, but again, it's also translating culture. And so they're also there with another man who is, I believe he's also an interpreter. I don't remember if they specified what his job was, but he was local. And something that Ahmed noticed that the rest of the guys didn't notice, he realized this guy is not on our side. He sold us out. He gave away our position and he acts accordingly. And the other guys who are American don't really know what to do with his reaction because he gets violent. He decides to go all out on this guy and let him have it. Like, how dare you betray us? And they're just, confused. But it turns out he was right. The Taliban was coming their way and they had to leave and retreat and try again the next day or whenever it was. So that's his job. His job is not just to give them the language, but give them an idea as to what's happening, what's going on in the environment, because he understands not just the language, but the culture, something they don't quite have. But what I love about this movie is it really highlights the relationship between the U.S. Army, these men and women in uniform, and these men and women in uniform who are local, who are taking on a job that's so dangerous because they're seen as traitors in their own communities. How dare they betray the Taliban? How dare they go and work with the infidels? How dare they? And there's a lot of risk associated with that. But at the end of it is a promise that if they come on and they interpret, they work with them, there are visas for them, and they're able to go and relocate to the United States. So that's part of the prize here, is this promise of, hey, I'm going to take care of you, you're going to take care of me, and then we're going to go home together. That's the promise here. That's the covenant. That's the commitment. That's the bond. And this movie really, it's all about that. It's not so much about John Kinley. It's not so much about Ahmed, but it's about the covenant. It's about the bond. Another movie that did this really well was a movie called Devotion that came out this past winter with Jonathan Majors. I know everyone has an opinion on Jonathan Majors right now. We can talk about that another time. I might do a whole rant about that one because I have so many things to say. But that movie was based on a true story about a man who died in action, I believe in Korea, and his body, I believe, has never been recovered. His plane went down and he died. And that movie really was about the bond. we really didn't get a whole lot of character development with the different men in that movie because it wasn't so much about the development of the characters themselves, but the development of their relationship, their bond. That's what we were supposed to connect with. And that movie did such a good job. The fact that more people didn't see that, it didn't get more recognition, really upsets my nerves. It was such a good movie. But that's what Guy Ritchie really wants us to focus on in this movie is the bond between the army and the interpreter, the bond between John Kinley, the sergeant in the army, and his interpreter. That bond, that commitment, that promise, that's what we're supposed to connect with, and it's beautiful. So, I don't know if you can tell by the way I'm talking about this, but I really love this movie. This is excellent. If I had to pick a top 5, and I think at this point I actually have to do a count how many movies I've actually seen this year, but I think this is a movie number 30. I have to look it up and I have to check because I wasn't planning on seeing any movies this week besides Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. But because of the technical issues, I ended up seeing a different movie on Thursday and then this again on Monday. So this might be 30. I have to double check. But yeah, I think you can tell. I really liked this movie. Yeah, definitely top 5 for sure so far. And what did I love about this? This movie I thought was just so quiet. There was almost a quietness about this movie. Number one, I loved how we got almost a realistic picture of army life. Something that we don't get in a lot of movies because they really do seek to entertain and give us something, to rah rah celebrate, hoorah, and all that jazz. But Guy Ritchie managed to give us the mundane, the ordinary, the what's the word? Oh, it's escaping me. The when you do something over and over, it's not mundane. It's something else. The routine, something. Let me know in the comment section what word I'm thinking of. It's bothering me. But he managed to give us basically the mundane and make it entertaining and make it engaging. I thought we were maybe 30 minutes into the movie. I checked my watch. No, we've been there an hour. The movie moves very, very well for being so quiet and yet understated. It's very quiet until it gets loud and then it goes boom. I loved Jake Gyllenhaal in this. He's one of my favorites. I've been a fan of his for a very long time. I'm a Donnie Darko kind of girl. Like, I love him as an actor. I love how versatile he is. I love how he knows how to be boisterous and loud and outrageous and how he knows how to be quiet and calm and still. And he's very calm. He's very quiet. He's very still in this, very understated. There's a very naturalness to his performance and it's wonderful. Dar Salim, who plays Ahmed in the movie, I love the contrast. These are two family men who are working for something greater than themselves, and yet they're very different and yet very similar. And yet there's this love and unspeakable bond between the two. They share something, an experience that's beyond our own understanding, something I don't think we'll ever fully grasp. And I thought they played to that relationship very, very well. The music. The one thing I could say that really upset me about this movie is the music. Not that the music was bad, but that I can't find it on Apple Music. There's no soundtrack. If there's a soundtrack, somebody send me a link. Let me know. Because the score, the music in this was captivating. It was so good. Like, it had me relaxed. I think that's kind of the secret sauce to this movie is the music. God, it's so good. What's the dude's name? Doesn't even matter right now. I'm not going to speak the man's name until he puts this thing on Apple Music. If you're a Spotify guru, go ahead, do that thing. I want it on Apple Music. This deserves to be heard over and over and over again. Like, I could fall asleep. It was beautiful. There was something very modern and classical, yet it had that I don't know what the proper word is for Middle Eastern music, but it had that, I think, kind of almost sing-songy kind of quality that really kind of captures the American ear. There's something about the music from there and the accent that just almost kind of lulls American ears to sleep. It's beautiful. It's soothing. It's calming. So if you're from that area and you've always wondered, what does your accent sound like to an American ears? Listen to me very carefully. I cannot hear the words in what you're speaking because I've never broken down a language like that one. However, when you speak, there's something about it that makes me feel like everything is good in the world. Everything is sweet. Everything is beautiful. There's something very beautiful and very calming about the way you sound that just makes everything in the world so much brighter. And he was able to capture that in the music, the beauty of this language in an area that's just rife with turmoil. He was able to pull out and snatch the beauty out of it. And you can't listen to that anywhere else. And I'm mad about it. Do you hear how mad I am? Ugh. But this is where spoilers come in. This was a moment, and I have to talk about it because it was absolutely brilliant. I talked a little bit about this on TikTok, but I want to see if I can get deeper into it because this was so brilliant. This was absolutely brilliant, and I have to talk about it. It was such a classical, not classical, but like classic director kind of moment. Okay, just bear with me, okay? Because I'm about to be all over the place. This had me geeked out, absolutely geeked out, and I love it when I geek out in a theater. So we have this movie, right? And they're on a mission. They've gotten good intel that there's a place somewhere in the mountains. I don't really understand Afghanistan geography. Don't come at me, but they're, somewhere in the mountains, there is a place where they're building bombs. And so they go there and they come out their cars and their whatevers with their guns, telling people hands up, whatever, go here, go there. Med is with John Kinley, and they're going to find the place where the bombs are. They find them. They shoot one guy. They shoot another guy. They realize that the guy that they shot was a guy that actually killed one of their brothers. So they shoot him dead. He deserved it. But they realize this is the place where the bombs are and they have to destroy them. So John Kinley, Jake Gyllenhaal's character, sets some kind of bomb. I don't know anything about this stuff, so don't come at me, but he sets a bomb on the counter, and then we hear him say over a radio that it's, bomb is in place, it's set to blow in 3 minutes. 3 minutes. So, they go out of the room, try to get away from the building so they're not, in harm's way, and that's when everything goes off. Because someone that was there called someone on the phone, said, hey, Americans are here. So a bunch of other guys show up from the other end in their trucks, guns are blazing, and there's a firefight. Okay, rockets are going off, people are dying, and it went from calm, collected, and controlled to absolute chaos. Absolute chaos. These men went from being alive and ready to go home to all of them dying, except, here's a spoiler, except John Kinley and the interpreter. They end up escaping in a stolen. They end up shooting their way out towards a truck, one of the Taliban's truck, and driving away. And as they're driving away, the bomb goes off. The bomb that was set for 3 minutes went off. That geeked me out to the nth degree. Do you hear me? Oh my God, how genius was that? To give us a moment like that, to set the bomb down and let us know this thing is set to blow in 3 minutes. How quickly things can that was a subtle message from the director, letting us know that even in a moment's notice, when everything's going right, how quickly things can go wrong, how quickly things can change, how one moment you can be alive doing your job and then dead on the ground with people checking your dog tags, trying to identify you and figure out who you are. How quickly things can go wrong. 3 minutes. 3 minutes we're given that. I really want to go back and watch the movie and just time that scene to see if it actually is 3 minutes. Because that was just such a classic director thing to do. You don't see stuff like that anymore. And I love that. I absolutely love that. But I thought this was an incredibly well done film. Guy Ritchie is very consistent in what he does. He's a great director. And this is, as of right now, one of the best of the year. And I hope you take the time to see it. And I hope whoever hears this has influence and can put the soundtrack on the Spotify or the Apple Music, preferably the Apple Music, because that's what I have and that's what I care about. Hell, put it on YouTube. All right, just give me the music. That's all I want. But yeah, this was well done, beautifully done, great acting, beautifully shot, great cinematography, great landscape. Most of this being shot in, it's almost kind of one color. What is it, monochrome? Where everything is kind of like very one colored. We have the mountains of Afghanistan. So it's a lot of browns, a lot of reds, very one color where things kind of all look the same. And I think that, gives us an idea of just how stressful everything is when you're trying to reach a goal and everything looks the same. You're looking for differences and changes in the environment. I don't know. To me, that just kind of added to the stress of it all, that I'm not familiar with this terrain. Not only am I not familiar with this terrain, but I don't none of it looks familiar to me. I don't recognize it. I've never seen mountains like this. I've never seen dirt like this. I'm only familiar with the kind of sandy dirt of South Carolina, the red clay of North Carolina, and then the seashells and oyster cells that are underground here in the city of New Orleans. That's what I'm familiar with, but that kind of red dust sand, that's different. And it's me trying to figure out where they are, how much longer they have to go, because these two men, they escape, right? They're walking, trying to get back to base, trying to communicate with someone. They get caught, and now Ahmed has to handle things, and then now he has to travel across the mountains with John, who's been shot, who's hurt, who's dead weight. And he could have left him there and left. He could have left him there and gone about his business. But instead, he says, no, we have a bond. We have a commitment. I'm bringing you home. Just the strength and the power and the bond in those scenes, because that's the bulk of the movie, honestly, is him carrying him across those mountains. Oh, so good. I love this movie very, 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 very much. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. Thank you once again for listening to me rave about another movie. So just to sum it up, that was The Covenant, directed by Guy Ritchie. I thought this was an excellent piece of work, great acting, beautifully shot, great sound, cinematography. My only issue is that I can't find the soundtrack on Apple Music. That's literally my only issue with this movie. That's it. That's pretty much it. So if you're someone who wants to see this movie, but you're afraid that you're just going to have another message pushed to you, this is not it. This movie is not based on a true story, but it does pay homage to real relationships, that, like I said, that bond between U.S. servicemen and interpreters. And it also kind of pays tribute and brings awareness to the many interpreters whom we've made promises to, but they've been left behind. And I don't know, I thought this was just a beautifully done film. One of my favorite war movies, because like I said, a lot of war movies lately just try to make things fun, which is not bad because it's all about escape, right? But I think there's something honest about this take. Kind of Saving Private Ryan in the same vein, in the way it's honest, All Quiet on the Western Front, kind of like that. It's just real, very honest, but beautiful. And I loved it. So what's coming up next, y'all? Oh my goodness. Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. I can't wait. I still need to start the book. The book is super short, though. It shouldn't take me very long to read. I just got to sit down, get it done. I read it when I was little, when I was much younger. And I really, really want to read it again. So, and I think I've said this in another review. I just think I found when I was reviewing Beautiful Disaster that having read the book was very helpful to some people, because a lot of people who are going to see this movie have read the book. So they're wondering how it compares. And so I can't really give you an honest take on the movie itself, because this is an adaptation. That's that has to be part of it all, is how well does this do as an adaptation? That's how it's judged. So I should be knowledgeable, at least somewhat, on the subject matter. But having read Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, it's been a very long time. And, I was young when puberty hit me, much younger than the title character. So there was a lot of the book that was not revolutionary for me at the time, because I already knew by the time I read it. And I'd love to read it again as a grown woman, knowing all that I know now. So I will let y'all know how I feel about that. Guardians of the Galaxy comes out next week, but I'm not sure if I'm going to see it. I have seen 1, 2, but I'm not really caught up on what's going on with Marvel. I never saw Endgame. So I don't know. I don't know who's supposed to be alive, who's supposed to be dead, unless it's Iron Man. That's the only one I knew about, because it's the only one people talked about. But I don't know. I'm kind of over Marvel at this point, if I'm being real with you. So I'll let you know you'll find out when I find out if I decide to see it or not. But I am going to see a movie called Love Again next week. So cute little rom-com it should be. I'll let you know how I feel about it. And that's it. That's it for right now. Until the next time, love you much, and I will see you soon. Want to advertise on this podcast? Check the episode description to see how you can be featured on the next episode.